What's poppin', y'all? Lil Yachty came back again on his own podcast to reply to the comments and the outrage that people had when he said that hip-hop was in a terrible place right now. It's lacking creativity. Everything sounds the same. People decided to go in on him. I somewhat defended Yachty on this point, saying that you can call Yachty anything you want, but the dude was original when he came in the game, and he's consistently shown a level of creativity, whether you like it or not, that is outside of the norm of his peers. And some people will call that trash or not, but that wasn't the argument. The argument was, why does everything sound the same? But Yachty comes back, and he says a bunch of different things. Some of them were straight up incorrect, so we'll go over that. I'll try to see if I can play you guys a clip, but I think it's copyright, so I might not even bother. But we'll see. I'll test it out. If you don't see a clip, that means it got copyrighted.
Alright, first off, hip-hop, the #1 leading genre for 10 plus years. Up until recently, about a year ago, and it fell in the rankings of being #1.
What's #1 now?
Country music and Latin music. People aren't supporting hip-hop like they once did because it's a decline in the content. The people that even read blogs, you know what I'm saying? It's fucking these old folks. When you say something like hip-hop is in a terrible place, they thinking I'm talking about from like, oh yeah, you're right. But you can't say it because you're not making the music we want either.
So Yachty hit a couple of points. The first one that he hit was that hip-hop was the leading genre for 10 plus years. It was the #1 genre, and then recently in the past 2 or so years it's been overtaken by Latin or country music, one of the two. Now this off rip is incorrect. The #1 genre since it's been up to 2017, and since 2010 the most dominant music genre in the US, which is what Yachty's talking about, was pop. Pop music was the most dominant genre. It was holding the largest share of Billboard spots since 2006. After 2011, it slowly started to drop off, but it was still #1. And it wasn't until 2017 forward that hip-hop/R&B overtook pop and rock to become the most popular genre in the US. Eventually, 2019, hip-hop slowly becoming more and more prominent, which was about like 25% of music consumed. And then in 2020, it became the most popular genre, which was like 27.7% of the music consumption. So let's say 2017 to about 2021, that's 4 years. That's significantly less than the 10 years that Lil Yachty is talking about. And this is a very, very important time frame because we're going to come back to it for another point that Yachty made a little bit later. So #1, it was not the most dominant genre for 10 plus years in the years that he's talking about. Keep in mind, 2017 onward, right? And you got to think, it makes sense, right? You had 2010 to 2017 was kind of a golden era for pop. Pop music we had so many hits. You know, we had Katy Perry, we had LMFAO, we had a lot of stuff is escaping me off the top of my head, but Taylor Swift. There's a ton of pop hits during that era and a lot of pop hits that just came and went. So the next point that Yachty goes on to make is that the budgets are kind of changing. So he's saying there's a decline of support for hip hop music. And this is where I want to bring in the conversation of, is there a decline in support, or is it like supply and demand? Is there too large of a supply of rappers to meet the demand that people are willing to support and consume? Because think about it, album sales are one thing. We used to have way less rappers back in the day. Consumption is the new album sales. If 8 rappers are dropping on a weekend, there's no way that someone's going to keep up every single weekend. People have lives, people have school, people have a bunch of stuff to do. So I personally think that there may not exactly be a decline in support, although I do believe there is, for reasons I'll get to in a second. But if we disregard that there's a decline in support, there is such a high supply now of rappers that it naturally has to distribute the level of attention that each rapper gets. It's just the nature of the game. There's only so much people that can provide attention to rappers. Now, the argument becomes, well, how come rappers back then were getting more attention and the market is bigger now than it was? Like, for example, hip hop's bigger now than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So naturally, the music should be doing better. And I genuinely also believe that there is less support. So I gave an argument for why we could argue, even if there's the same level of support, the supply is so high. But I do think there is less support because Yachty was kind of talking about they all kind of sound the same, especially when you talk about mainstream artists. They're all working together. They're all dropping similar music. And then you just think, I'm listening to basically the same person, same sound, same producer really that they all go to all the time. And it gets kind of like mind numbing. So if you're listening to a genre for the most part, and this genre is just the same to you, you're going to try a different genre. You're like, whoa, finally, like a relief. I'm getting to listen to something else. And popular music is just popular music. music, so people could check different subgenres within hip-hop, but that's a lot more difficult. It takes time. You kind of have to really be into music to delve deeper into things like that, which the casual fan isn't, and there's nothing wrong with that. So that's just two angles to look at it. Now, he uses kind of charts to define how good the music is or in what place it is. Or actually, one more point that I wanted to make. Even if there was more of a distribution and spread across the attention per rapper, hip-hop as a whole, if it was getting the same level of attention and support, should still be the highest performing genre, yet it's not. Which is why I will say that Yachty is correct in that there is less support for it. And you know what they say, like less budgets and stuff like that. Now, he's kind of using charts and hip-hop being number one to define how creative or good the music is or link it to that. I'm not going to give much of an opinion on this because it's such a subjective thing. Like what someone thinks is good, someone else thinks is trash. What's on the top of the charts, someone else might hate. So it's just terrible to make a point regarding this. But I will say from Yachty's own perspective, the music that he likes, he went and dove into the whole Detroit hip-hop scene. He made a tape with these guys. He showed a lot of love to these guys. These guys ain't on the charts. So he clearly thought that they were creative and they were artistic, but they had no presence on the charts. So I think those 2 points can't really coexist for Yachty, the charts and the creativity aspect of it. Then he goes on to kind of talk about the comments that people made about him, saying that people that read blogs are on a certain side of hip-hop, and he kind of denigrates them by saying, hey, these are old heads that are messing with like Sugar Hill Gang. Man, Sugar Hill Gang is, if I'm not mistaken, is from the 80s. The majority of people that are making these comments on hip-hop that he's calling old are within his age group. Yachty's like, what, 26? People from 26 to like 32, I would say. They didn't grow up on no Sugar Hill Gang. They grew up on 2000s rap, where people were not just lyrical, and he's kind of talking about taking a shot at people that are looking for lyrical artists, and they're mad at Yachty giving the message because he's not the messenger that they wanted, and he's not making the music that they want him to make, which he does have a point on that front. But these guys are not as old as he's trying to describe. Blogs came out for the generation that grew up on 2000s rap. Those were the people that were following it and who may still be following it, but most are just like on Instagram. So Yachty's also like 20, I don't know. He's in his mid-20s at least, and he's saying, oh, the kids, they're not seeing this, and they're saying that hip-hop's in a great place. So if the kids are saying hip-hop's in a great place and you're saying it's not, what's the deal here? Because if the kids were all listening to it, then it would still be at the top, because kids are the ones that got a ton of time to just be listening to stuff. But they're not. That's the thing. The kids, they're listening to a lot of this country and Latin music. That's where the shift is coming from. It's not just adults. A lot of young teens, or young adults, I would say, like 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, they're listening to these Latin and country artists more than they're listening to hip-hop and rap artists. So it's not really these old heads that aren't listening to hip-hop anymore, these older people. It's the young people. These are the people that are always shifting the rankings of how everything is doing commercially. So yeah, and even kids, like I said, they don't really think hip-hop is doing great right now. Because what hip-hop scene is there? What upcoming artists are there? Not just upcoming artists individually, but a group of musicians where you're like, yo, this is the next wave. It's not going on. They might like one or two artists. Then circling back to, he went and said, oh, people try to clown on him for Poland. And he comes and says, Poland is a rap song that you guys have never even heard anything like. That's why it had the reception that it did. And yeah, I will say shout out to Yachty for that. He's 100% right. I've always said this guy is very, very creative. Do I like a lot of the stuff that he's put out? Hell no. But he's willing to push things forward. And Poland is very original, despite whether you like it or not. Circling back to my original point though, when he says hip-hop was number one and it's not number one now, and that has something to do with creativity, this is still somewhat of a subjective point, but I think we all share this subjective point and can come together on it. If you think about golden age of creativity, and let's say let's not say golden age because everyone gets triggered and their ears perk up like a bear just saw someone pass by. Let's say a very, very creative era within hip-hop. I would say it was post 2009, 2010, up until 2017. Because I think a lot of people will agree, while good music was released in hip-hop 2017, 2018, 2019, a lot of it was straight buns and garbage. A lot of this like trap music era, you had the Lil Pumps, the Smoke Perps, who wasn't even really charting like that, but it was SoundCloud era. You had a lot of one-hit wonders. Just look at the freshman lists. I mean, we're not counting 2016. We're saying like 2017, 2018 onward. I mean, you had Designer, who kind of came and went. He was on 2016. But if you think when hip-hop wasn't the number one genre, so 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, it was the number one genre. And this is when some of the worst artists creatively were around and very lacking in creativity. But you go back to 2010 to 2016 to 2017. I mean, let me just get started. Creatively speaking, we had the likes of Mac Miller. We had Odd Future as a group. We had ASAP Mob as a group, ASAP Rocky. We had Black Hippie, with that whole crew that was going on. We had even Macklemore. Like, say what you want about him. Just these 5 artists that I named you, all of these people made completely different sounding music, were very creative in their own right, whether it was music videos, whether it was production, whether it was the way they rapped, whether it was the demographic that they hit. I mean, we even had groups like Raider Clan at the time as well, who weren't necessarily mainstream like the other 5 that I just mentioned. But you just keep going forward. Throughout those years, we had a lot of creative artists, yet hip-hop wasn't number 1. And I know for a fact Yachty would agree with this point. So clearly we can't connect that to be the reason why hip-hop isn't number 1 right now. I think it's a matter of a certain demographic and market that was relatively silent is now shifting their attention. So I think a lot of these white kids or Latinos, they're shifting towards music that's more fun, and probably it had something to do with 2020 to 2022 happening. And I think a different type of music is being appreciated now, because I mean, you still see Sexy Red. She's doing her thing. She's kind of lit, and she's been lit for like I would say this entire year or so. We don't know how long that's going to last, but she doesn't seem like she's going to fall off to her demographic anytime soon. So I think Yachty's got some great points, but I do think he is overlooking some other points as well. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. Why do you think attention is shifting away from hip-hop? In your honest opinion, let me know. Like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for watching. Peace.